We're so old, you'll understand what I mean when I say The Gambler, the song.
Mm-hmm. Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers. And what's the phrase that people always quote?
You got to know when to hold 'em and...
Right? Know when to fold 'em.
Yep.
Know when to walk away.
Uh-huh. And know when to run.
Oh, I thought it was when to have fun. Oh, now that's...
That's Cyndi Lauper.
Oh, great. That's right. So, we're so old. We're dealing with the idea of dealing with what we're dealt, both the good and the bad.
Yes.
And this is part 2 of that. And you shared about all of these wonderful opportunities you had at a time where the most visible part of your career was peaking.
Mm-hmm.
And that reminded me of something that I want to say. So I know what I want to talk about in this conversation. Do you have a sense of where you want to go?
I do. And you talking about the being institutionalized and going through that process too, really sharing that side of who you are and that part of your journey, that was very special, and thank you for doing that. So yeah, I'm interested to see where we go in our part 2.
Well, let's do it.
Welcome to the Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Hey, this is Dan Green.
And Eric Stewart.
And this is episode 33, part 2 of Dealing with What We're Dealt. Yes. So I started off last time, but, we don't necessarily have a specific order that we stick to.
Right. Yeah, I can go first. And that way, since I'm probably going to talk about the darker side of that.
Right, we'll end on a more positive.
I know. I think that would be nicer.
Yeah, let's do it like that. So
when I think of sort of the most challenging and some of the darker times, there have been a few. There have definitely been a few. But I think one of the lowest points in my life was during my divorce.
Sure.
My divorce and the process of that marriage ending. We'd been together for almost 20 years and had 2 kids. Was like a 4 to 5 year process. And,
oh my God.
I come from, my parents divorced when I was 4. My dad also then remarried and divorced again when I was, I think I was 13. So it was just sort of part of my existence, just, as a kid. Wasn't expecting it to be part of my existence as an adult. Fought very hard to maybe stick around a little bit longer than maybe both of us should have, because I didn't want to repeat what my father had done. But going from New York City and all of the work I was doing there, making that transition and moving to Nashville to do what I really love to do, the pressures of that sort of shift in lifestyle and the financial situation, new city, new schools, new friends, all of that stuff. And then just that sort of the dynamic of, my relationship sort of deteriorating, slow burn kind of thing. But going from this sort of peak when I was, the things we were talking about in the last episode, to the absolute opposite, going to a place where I lost everything, was broke, was homeless. I had to live with a friend of mine who was kind enough to take me in, because I couldn't afford to pay for the housing for my soon-to-be ex-wife and kids, as well as a place for myself and my dog. But going to that sort of that low point of, counting change to figure out if I could go shopping for food and not having, to a point where, yes, I my parents were helpful. They are not wealthy people, but they were helpful. But it was just the emotional, the mental strain of that, the financial strain of that.
Can't even imagine.
Feeling I was being, invasive by staying with my friend longer than I probably should have, taking advantage of his kindness because I didn't have anywhere else to go. It just was, I definitely was dealing with being depressed about all of that, frustrated with the fact that there was really nothing that I felt that I could do to pull myself out of that situation. It was going to take time to rebuild anything that even, at that point, I didn't think I was going to get out of that. I didn't think I was going to get to a point where I could slowly rebuild.
You didn't think that you were going to mentally get to that point?
Financially, mentally, like everything that was being presented with me was breaking me. Like I was just broken. I wasn't doing anything besides scrambling to try to just make enough money so that I could just get by each day. And I didn't have a studio, all right, because I had lost my house. So what do you do when you're a voiceover guy and the only way you make money is doing voiceovers and you have nowhere to record? Thankfully, at that same time, my dear friend, Mr. Frampton, had just purchased a studio in Nashville. And he invited me over to check it out, whatever. We talking a little bit, and I saw that he had this tiny little side room that was almost like a Studio B, right? It was like a little, maybe it was like a 10 by 10 little room. And it had a booth in it as well, a vocal booth, which had its own little glass door. And I said, look, is there any way I can, rent that space, something here, so that I have at least a quiet space to have a microphone set up? And he was so amazing. He said, you can have the vocal booth because no one's ever going to do voiceover stuff or anything like that in there. If anybody's going to do anything in the room, it's going to be in the control room. And if not in there, they'll be in the big room. So I can't give you the Studio B because that might be something that I do rent out or whatever. But I'll give you the vocal booth as your own little studio. And all you got to do is pay for the, give me I think it was like $100 for the electric, right? and that was a lifesaver. Like, honestly, if you can imagine someone throwing a rope with the lifesaver around it so that I could, not drown, that's what that was. I could never thank him enough, even though I did try. It kept me from just having nothing. So, so I had my little setup there. And of course, I was working on a laptop, so I would go in there and record, and then I would drive the 15 minutes back to my friend's house where I was staying, and for the end of the day or whatever, and if there was a mistake or I had to go back and do a fix, I would take my laptop and drive back to the studio. Like, it wasn't like I was working out of home. So there was a lot of just the stress of okay, do I have everything? Is it all right before I go?
Sure.
Because I didn't want to live at the studio. It wasn't my studio,
Right.
Right. I was trying to figure out, what I was going to do to earn a living. And
at that point, you're not feeling like you're killing it. I mean, you're still feeling pretty down.
Oh, I'm not killing it ever. At this point, I'm thinking I have
you have that that lifeline, right?
I have that lifeline
dangling off the side of the ship.
Yeah, I was trying to get some new clients. I had a problem with the laptop's battery, back in those days. Some of those Mac laptops had the battery would swell, and that's what I had that problem. So of course repairs and all of that stuff, things that I just didn't have the funds to really do very much. And I was thinking like, well, maybe I need to do something else for a living, but what can I do? I applied to advertising agencies as producers. And, this is the other frustrating thing. My resume may be impressive, and this is, of course, we're talking pre-COVID and all of this sort of stuff where I think there's been a big shift in terms of what people can do and where they do it. But all of these companies that I applied to, they all wanted my college degree stuff. And, I didn't go to school for any of the things that I've made a living doing. Okay. So I could say to them, well,
we should do a whole episode on
right.
that.
It's like, I'm a high school graduate. Like I did 6 months of college, and yet I've supervised, television shows for, on 2 major networks that were some of the most popular and successful animated series of all time. But that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter when you're trying to become like the producer for a local Tennessee advertising agency, and they don't, they won't even give me an interview because I, in the form I have to fill out, I have to say I'm just a high school graduate. Right. So it became very apparent that, like Liam Neeson, I have a very particular set of skills, and
when you kill it,
yeah,
you kill it.
But I like outside of the arena that you and I work in, I don't have that. Like I'm not marketable that way. I've really sort of, fine-tuned what I do, which is great, but I'm not trained to be an audio engineer. I am one. All of these things. So I can't show the credentials besides my resume. And then, of course, sometimes the resume is too impressive because they see that these are the things that you've done, and if you go back to that, you're going to leave them. Right? Does this small advertising agency think I'm going to stick around if all of a sudden I do get another cartoon or I do get another job where I'm producing something? They might say, well, yeah, we don't want to hire you and train you and get you up to speed because you only will last here, 6 months to a year before you move on to something bigger and better than we are. So I was really stuck, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do to get myself out of this funk. And it took probably 5 years. Now we're talking like 4 years or so to go through the whole divorce process. This was just a nightmare. And then it probably took me 5 years to get to a point where I feel comfortable again, both financially and emotionally. But it's one of those things in life where, is it best that we're not together? Yes. Could the process have been a little kinder? Oh, definitely. I know people who have separated or divorced who are still cordial to each other.
Sure.
That's not my dynamic. And anger is just so unhealthy. It's like you and I have talked about this too. It's like there's just toxic things in our lives that we can, at some point you just go, this is not healthy for me. I don't want to fight about it. I just don't want it to be part of my life. Right. Right. So it was really a dark time. I was writing because I was depressed. So I was doing a good job at writing songs. I wasn't recording. I wasn't really playing much with the band because I couldn't afford to pay the band. That wasn't, I tried to look for anything that I could do. And thank goodness there was a couple of things that my good friend Richard, who I was staying with, he worked for a company that did a lot of industrial voiceover things and got me some voiceover work, which was really kind. That helped me at least get a little bit of some more financial security. But it was really more just the emotional side of it that I was pretty much like The Walking Dead. I was just my days were a blur, but not because, in a good way. They just were never ending because I just didn't know, what the next chapter was going to be, if it was going to be. So, yeah. And, you and I are very, very dear friends. And you and I talk about a lot of things outside of the podcast. We share a lot of personal stuff. Which is, I think that's my therapy, is that my friends are my sounding post where I can vent and whatever, and it's not like I'm always looking for advice. I just need to be able to say the words that I want to say to someone besides my dog. But like that, I'm also a very, very private person. I shut down and I try to figure it out. That's what I do. I if I'm ever quiet in the corner of a room somewhere, it's because the wheels in my brain are spinning a million miles an hour. I'm analyzing every situation and trying to figure out the remedy. And that's what I was doing, but I didn't talk to anyone really. People knew what I was going through, but it was really just and I don't know if I just felt like either no one's really going to, you can only hear about it so much, be like, we know you're dealing with this, Eric. Not that I felt like I was a burden on anyone, but the other thing is like, I didn't have anything else to really talk about because it sort of like, it consumed me. That was my life.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes when you have something that you're persistently struggling with, you really don't have more to say.
Yeah.
So that might sound, sort of counterintuitive, but it can sometimes be like that.
Yeah. And if there can be any silver lining to all of that, is that, these are also sort of wake up calls to like, what's really important as like people and humans. After being in a situation where I had nowhere to go and my friend took me in, no questions asked, no, I didn't pay him rent. He didn't ask for that because he knew I had no money. I would help out and do whatever I could in the house. He was a single guy. So like, it's like, oh, all right, I'll go and pick up the groceries. I can't buy them, but I'll go pick them up, I'll help you clean the house, or I'll do some, landscaping with you in the backyard or whatever. I can do that. That I can do. Is that when friends of mine or acquaintances of mine who then became very dear friends of mine were in a situation where they had to be out of their house for a certain amount of time. I didn't even think twice about offering them space in my house. Like,
there have been a number of times where you're telling me, oh yeah, and this weekend I got this person from this corner of my life, and they're going to be staying for whatever reason, for whatever period. Yeah, you definitely do that.
Yeah. And it's not because I feel like oh, it's karma, I better do this because something bad's going to happen if I don't. It's more like no. I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. And the fact that at this time in my life, I'm back into the position where I do have that to give to someone, to offer to someone. And I find joy in that. And not everybody likes to open up their doors to people and have company. I don't want people here all the time. I like my alone time, trust me. But I don't know. It's like I spend so much time like fixing up my place and doing all of these projects, and I love to see them. That's all great. But I also like to sort of say, come on over and see what I've done. Experience what I've done. Come sit in the backyard with the pergola that I built. Like enjoy this with me. Like I find joy in you enjoying my domain too.
Right. Right. That's by the way on my list. Must get misted by Eric's pergola.
Yes,
and that's not code for anything.
Not on this show. But anyway,
not on this show.
So that's my darkest time, and that's the things that I had to deal with. And
it's a big one, man.
Yeah. So anyway, thank goodness I got through that. But yes. So why don't you flip it around for us and give us something happy to digest?
Right. For those fans of Monty Python.
Yes.
And now for something completely different.
That's right.
Yeah. So, as you may know, as I know you know, I never was the kind of person who expected to have fans.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I think that my work is shoddy. It's just has never been a part of the equation of why I do the work that I do. And of course, an actor is nothing without an audience, but that's different than having what we call fans,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so whenever I'm creating a performance, the audience is always on my mind. I mean, when you're throwing yourself into a role, of course, you're throwing yourself into the character, but it's so that you are doing a good job for your audience, the best you can do for your audience. And not completely dissimilar to what you were recently, talking about having a lot of work at a certain period of time.
Yep.
I had a version of that myself, and I was having also new opportunities. So I'm a guy who wanted to do pretty much theater, or at least that's what I was thinking. And the voiceover stuff came as a something else, right? But was not really intended to be the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to make the switch. And in doing so, other opportunities like, doing some directing and stuff like that, or doing, adapting some scripts, and which is nothing glorious, right? But at the time when I'm in my early 30s, it was a very attractive to me, because instead of struggling to get some steady work, I had lots of threads of steady work.
Right.
And I was just focused on, similar to what you were talking about, doing as much as I could, as best as I could, as often as I can. Because I don't know when it's coming by again.
Right.
That's part of the actor's mentality, right?
Yep.
And never have I had a salary job.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I had that focus of also the performance is not about me. The performance is about the story and the character, and it's for the audience. Of course, I enjoy doing it, right?
Right.
But in a sense, I want myself to not be a part of it on a certain level, right? It's I don't give a good performance thinking about, I hope this gets me lots of fans.
No,
I make a perform
not at all.
I want to make it. I just want to make a good performance.
Yeah, you are someone to me that is, as an actor, as a performer, as a creative person, on that stage, no pun intended. You dig deep into the story, the character, the nuance. That's definitely something that I admire as as a friend, and also as a professional, buddy when we've worked together.
Right. Sure.
But I can't even remember you ever giving off the idea that it was about the fame, or even if it was about the money. Like you definitely seem to be someone driven by the craft, and well, what a nice bonus. They're paying me to do this.
Well, there were definitely some things I did just for the money early on.
Right.
But it is nice to be in a position to, not have to do that.
Right.
Or not feel that you have to do that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, also at that time, I was earlier on in my relationship with Michael,
Mm-hmm.
but she made it clear that she wanted a family on our first date. And so I'm functioning from a very simple mindset of, okay, so my job is to make money.
Right.
We're going to have a family. We're going to need money.
Right.
And also having, that insecurity of work, which is just part of what it is to be a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
All freelancers have that reflexive, I'll do that. I'll take that job.
Right.
Anyway, so that I had fans was, a wonderful thing to discover. And I have always been somewhat disbelieving of it. But I think I gave off the impression that I didn't care about the fans because I wasn't engaging with them. And I think for the most part, fans of mine understand that isn't where I was really coming from, but I can understand if somebody received it that way. And I haven't been good about returning every fan letter.
Right, and also you took a long time to be on any sort of form of social media, which I commend you on.
Yeah,
like you were. I mean, like honestly, really, like well done. But like that's another reason why you didn't have the interaction is because you weren't there.
I wasn't set up for it.
Yeah.
Right, and I always had. From my point of view, I felt I always had something more important to do than aggrandize myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just I don't get much out of that.
Right.
That's not where I draw my self-esteem from. Now, hey, it does make me feel great, seeing fans and being told repeatedly over the course of the day all these kind things that I maybe half deserve.
Right.
But that's not really where my true source of worth comes from.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's the whole confidence ego thing. You definitely, that's exactly who you are.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You are a confident actor, but you're not an egotistical one. You're confident in your skills, but you don't need to I need to where's my fans to tell me how great I am? That's not what you're looking for.
Right. No. And I would question any relationship where that affirmation is really what's driving it. If I would feel like, okay, well, what am I missing in myself that is getting outsourced to this sort of behavior? But I think people who are that egotistical appear so fragile to me.
Yes.
And even though they think they're owning the room with their demand or their brashness, but I typically think, wow, that person's maybe got some problems.
Maybe now and then, here or there. So managing the attention that I get from work that you know how bizarre this is. It's work that I did so long ago. Yeah.
And that people care about it is just, I understand how it happened, but as I jokingly say sometimes to people I'm interacting with at conventions, I'll ask like, oh, when did you start getting into it? And they'll usually tell me, early, they were 10 or so, somewhere around then. And I said, oh, yeah, these shows were able to brainwash you. Influence you at just the right time. People get it.
Well, you're also playing catch-up. These fans have been wanting to tell you this stuff for years.
Yeah.
And it's taken you years to get to these conventions and start making these appearances and also being sort of accessible on social media. So they've got 20 years worth of fandom to tell you about.
I guess that's true. Also, I should say that it wasn't that I never made any appearances. I did make appearances maybe of a handful of times. But no more frequent than maybe once a year.
Right.
If that. So, yeah. But I promise anyone who's listening, it's not that I take it for granted. It's not that I don't care. And I'm certainly deeply flattered. But that my focus was just in a different area in my life. And now that I've had a chance to meet fans and understand what that interaction can be, it's such a wonderful thing. But I also have to be really careful about it.
Mm-hmm.
And in this age of social media and whatnot, there's also a lot of opportunity for people to, what's the term when all their info is, it's like an attack on somebody.
Dox them?
Dox them, that's what it is.
Yes.
Can you imagine? Oh. And and there's other ways to cross a line, but not that I think that's what my fans are about. But then there's also the other extreme where maybe there is somebody out there who does have malevolence against you for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, it's hard. Our society, we build people up because we love them. We want to make them, this is the coolest thing ever. Right. We build them up to that point because then it's fun to tear them down. sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean, not that we're like super famous, so it's not like we're at that
No.
level, but
we don't think of ourselves that way.
not at all, not at all. But it is, and it is an interesting. I mean, we're both fans of things and people. Like we have met people that we are fans of, and that's great.
Yes.
And we're, some of us are, really just like we can't get enough of certain like, series or movies or whatever it is. That's our thing. That's our jam. But it also can get, you blur that line sometimes. Like there are people that I consider fan friends that are, people I see who are, they started as fans and there's a friendship that's there. There's definitely that dynamic. Then there's people that are, that are fans. And then there's sometimes people that are, it's maybe not an appropriate dynamic that is trying to, I don't
Which is rare.
Right.
Which is rare, but it happens.
But it happens. And it's hard because, you want to be open and friendly and all of this, but because there are also that is that darker element that's out there, people are looking for opportunities to maybe misconstrue something, or also maybe just like you said, trying to just to be trolls and try to, bring you down, cut you down.
Right.
But that's a small percentage of what you're talking about. Like what we experience is. I just did a convention where I said this in the panel. I was doing a one-on-one Q&A, and I said, this is just a message for the guests that are curmudgeons about being there and don't interact with the fans. I said, no one's making you do this. Like this is a very special experience, and the community here is so diverse and accepting, and it's really a special thing. So like you should really be humbled by the fact that people actually invite you to be part of this and include you in part of this.
Right. Related to exactly what you're saying, I was interacting with some fans. I do have a problem using that term, but I was making clear now and then to people at my table that it's easy to think that the people on the other side of the table, the side I was on, right, that we're the special ones, but it's actually the reverse.
Yep.
Because without you, we're nothing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
to that curmudgeon, it's like, get real, man.
Yeah, and I mean I've been told a couple of times like, oh yeah, no, thank you for taking the time to talk to me because so and so just doesn't even lift their head up when they're signing and this. I'm like, come on, guys, like really, like you're missing an opportunity. I had this. I just have to tell you, I had this really amazing quick little story here. I just did this convention. I was in Australia, and I met this really sweet young man. He was in a wheelchair. He was with I think it was his sister or his friend, and his mom, and he was telling me he's working on being a filmmaker, and I was like, that's amazing. And he said, let me show you my film. It's a horror film and it's like, are you starring in it? He goes, yeah, I star in it. I wrote it. I edited it. I directed it. All this stuff, and it was like a 10-minute little movie, and I had a decent line. Thank you. I appreciate that to the attendees that were waiting to meet me. But I had a decent line, but I was like, no, I'm going to watch this video. And so we watched the video together, and it was really good. It was great. It was weird.
Wonderful.
It was quirky. It was funny. And after he walked away, I turned to the line of people and I said, thank you for being so patient. And a bunch of people who could hear me, who were close enough to hear me, were like, no, man, thanks for doing that. Like they enjoyed the fact that I kept them waiting because I was interacting. And And it was really for me. Like I was having a good time doing that. But it's a dance. It's beneficial to all of us. Like we're still people. Interact with each other. You might be online to get something signed by me, and yes, maybe there is a monetary exchange. But that's not like it's not just my job. Like I'm also there because we're at
it would
a
feel
Comic-Con.
sleazy if that is what it was.
And we're at a Comic-Con. We're not at I'm not selling fast food.
No.
So it's
Yeah.
it's a good experience for everybody. Yes.
Oh, for sure. And part of also what I'm learning, I'm still learning social media, and social media is changing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm learning. We used the word balance not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a balance to these things, and what fans of mine want from me is another thing that I'm learning. There was a character I didn't even know that people liked as much as they do, because for me it was a 1 hour session.
Right.
I mean, sorry, it was one session. It was more than 1 hour, but it was for one video game, and I was playing a villain, Mephiles. This is for Sonic, and yeah, it was just like, oh, okay. And now I have something people can have with Mephiles on it if they want. Entei was another one, which was one of my favorite things, and was really how I got into awareness at 4Kids, even though I had done some character of the week things on Pokemon, I think. But anyway, but learning what the fans want, also learning how the fans see me is an interesting, because there's who you are, and then there's the impression you make. Right. This is whatever. This isn't exclusive to actors or performers, right? Everybody has this dynamic in their life.
Yes.
So yeah, and I like the version of me that they see. I think it's a better version of me than I am, for the most part.
I don't know.
I could lean into that. But you got to be careful. And like this happened just recently on social media. I was making essentially another statement against bigotry. I hate all forms of bigotry.
Right.
All guys. You name it, I hate it.
Yep.
But I did. What drew my attention was the anti-Semitism thing.
Yes.
And one of the social media platforms I'm on is what used to be called Twitter X, and there are issues with that on that platform, in terms of it becoming more engaged in.
Yes.
And so even though I was using the term anti-Semitism, I also was careful to end the thought with I want all of the bigotry to go away. Right. But sure enough, somebody took that as me saying something against Palestine.
Right.
Which it's not hard to see the thinking, but that was so clearly not what I was saying.
Right.
And then you get into, like, I'm not going to talk about politics at all.
No,
but,
especially online. There's no reason to.
No. There's no reason to. Morals, here and there. And for me, that's what bigotry. It's not that issue is not a political party issue. That's a moral thing.
Sure, bigotry, hate, anger.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, we are in a very angry time, and I mean, you couldn't have said, "I like vanilla ice cream," without someone then coming back and going, "Oh, so you don't like chocolate? Okay."
Exactly. What's wrong?
It's like
with strawberry.
Exactly. Once again, strawberry is left out. No, I mean, not to make light of it, but I'm seriously like
oh, certainly not.
You can't say anything without somebody thinking, "Oh, I know what he really means."
Maybe taking it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just get the sense that they're just using you as a way to platform what they want to talk about anyway. But anyway, but for the most part, I mean, fans have been so wonderful, and I'm developing. It's like any other kind of relationship. I'm developing an understanding of what I think I should be bringing to it. Hopefully, also what they think I should be bringing to it.
Right.
And finding that to be really a good thing. And I feel like I'm also developing a sort of promise that I want to keep fulfilling with my fans. They give me the appreciation they've demonstrated to me in a good way motivates me to not only maintain a standard, but to try to push that standard even further.
Sure.
And there's other things that we're presenting our community with, and for they've been very supportive about other, like, they say nice things about my drawings and
I love
even
that
this podcast.
I love that. I love that. I just saw someone comment on a drawing that you posted saying, "Man, you're an amazing artist," and it's like
was it that comic book page?
And I love that because like yeah, you're going to hear that from your friends. I'm going to tell you that. And yes, you know, I'm being honest with you when I tell you that, but I'm still your friend, right?
Sure.
But when, strangers are just like blown away by learning a little bit more about maybe somebody that they're a fan of for one thing, and they learn that there's other things that they do or whatever, if it's creative or whatever, hobbies and things like that. Like, I don't know. I like that too. I like to dig deeper into the personalities of the people that I'm inspired by or influenced by. I like that.
Sure.
So that's I love seeing those little moments like that. Are you telling me Dan Green drew this? Yes. I love that.
And people sometimes, especially at the end of the day when we're making an appearance, they'll say, "Oh man, you must be super tired. Is your hand tired?" Or something along those lines. And I can truthfully always say, "You guys give me energy."
Mm-hmm.
Which is not to say that at the end of the day I don't want to knock off for a while.
Right.
But it's a very different exchange.
Yes.
Right. It's not like mundane, doing your yard work or whatever. Not actually. There's something I enjoy about that too. But understand what I mean. You're receiving so much of this energy from people, and it's extraordinary. And I've been fortunate to receive so many interesting stories about people's triumphs over certain struggles, or that they're struggling with something in that moment and they could use a hug, or they have something to help expand my appreciation of this community I get to be a part of, which is really more how I see it, as opposed to I think an artist might think, oh, I make something and then my fans are created, and it's like, no, it's really more. You're in a certain wavelength of things, and you get to be a part of this community that likes those things.
And what's kind of neat is that both of us have had experience with live performing, right? With your stage work and my music, right? But in our voiceover work, we're rarely in front of more people than an engineer, and sometimes not even that. So this gave us an opportunity to meet the people that were watching what we were doing. Because sometimes you're like, like you said, there's a character that people liked. I didn't even know that was a character that people saw, right? Right. So, but by meeting people at the conventions, you're like, oh, like, I almost get excited by the fact that they've read it deep enough in my resume to go like, you played this character in this random anime, like, 30 years ago. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, what's the character's name? Because I put it as my middle name in my autograph and I don't remember.
Yeah. There are a tier of fans out there that know way more about what I've recorded than I do.
Yes, but don't listen to Wiki because I'm constantly like, and you did this, and I'm like, nope. That's not me. Someone just posted, hey, I love that Eric Stewart sang the theme song to one of my favorite animes, blah, 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 blah. And I rarely comment on anything on Twitter. And I wrote back, nope. Right. I was like, not me, bud, but I'm glad you love the song.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might be Wiki or somewhere. I'm apparently 5 years younger than I am.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
And I was born in California. I think they confused me with Mark DeRazon.
Well, okay.
Which we can sound similar, so I get that.
Okay, yeah, okay. All right, I see it. Yeah. I see
it. So fans, I didn't realize what a wonderful thing this could be, and I'm sorry it took me so long to show up, but it's a delight to develop this kind of rapport. And I certainly feel so grateful for it. And I guess we should wrap this up.
Yeah. Way to end on a high note. I like it.
Woohoo! Oh, and I was also thinking we should do the letter stuff more frequently.
Yes.
Because one of the ones we read on our recent letters episode was from months before, and it was from Valerie, who's probably one of our most supportive fans, and is just a wonderful person. But I thought, maybe if we had this as of a more regular installment, that would be good too. We'd want to balance it. We'd still want to have the time to react to what the letter's about, as opposed to just reading it and saying, "Thanks, great letter."
Mm-hmm.
But we'll figure that part out too. But just something else that we're wanting to bring to this conversation of the heart of the cards, and it wouldn't be anything without you guys listening and following with us. So we deeply appreciate that. And thank you, Eric, for always being there for me.
Thank you, Dan.
And we will all look forward to the next time we can have a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stewart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.
Andromeda, always a sound choice.